I was wondering what you thought of the Wanted movie, because it was quite a departure from your graphic novel.
I loved it, you know. I mean, the first thing was whenever they got in touch with me to do Wanted, Universal phoned me up and said, now you have to remember, I literally had no track record in cinema at all. I hadn't even been involved in a school play or anything like nothing. So when Universal called up and said, really interested in doing Wanted, you know, we've got some changes we'd like to make to the plot. I was like, I don't care. You know, so if I can get a movie made, that's amazing, you know. And like JG felt the same way. We were like, are you kidding me? You know, this is great. So we just wondered what the changes were going to be, and they said, you know, this kind of thing about supervillains, we'd like to take the supervillains out of it. And we were like, oh, I'm not sure about that. But then when we went to the meetings, it's funny, you do become quite precious. At first you think, no, it's just cool having a movie made, you know. But then you actually think, hang on, this is something we created and we don't want it rubbish, you know, because there's nothing more horrible than something that you've done for a niche market suddenly reaching the mainstream and the mainstream perception of it being rubbish, you know. So we wanted it to be good. And at the meetings, though, they made a very good point, which was that the supervillain side of things in Wanted, all the kind of comic book in-jokes, really only about 100,000 people would get, because it's such a niche market. And they said, look, we need to do something else, because that stuff will mean nothing to the mainstream, but we'll keep the basis of it, which was the first hour of the movie, was the first 2 issues of the comic, which was loser at work finds out that his father was in a secret society of super killers, you know, and one of those people trains him up to be a badass and he can leave his rubbish old life behind, which is the plot of the comic. Then he finds out he's been betrayed and goes back and kills those guys, you know. So that basic structure they kept, and they kept the first 58 minutes is exactly the first 2 issues of the comic, pretty much, you know. But then they had all their own loom stuff in the middle, which was a bit mental, but actually somehow worked in a weird way too. So I was kind of cautious, but felt as if it could work out okay. But somehow at first didn't have massive high hopes until I met Timur. And when I read the script, I didn't like it at first, you know, and it went through lots of drafts, and they started to incorporate more stuff from the first 2 issues in particular, you know. They brought in about 3 other writers. And somehow by the end of it, and by the time Timur came on, it suddenly looked as if this might be good. And I met Timur for dinner. And between my accent and his accent, it was probably the most difficult dinner anyone's ever had, you know. But he showed me some previs stuff he'd been doing on it, and it was just some of the stunt work and everything. And it must have been, you know, just how people felt when they first saw John Woo or whatever. It was somebody from outside what we understand in action cinema coming in and doing something new. And even the previs, I was blown away. I was so excited by it. And then I started to allow myself to get excited. And then by the time we edited the movie and kind of went through it, and they brought me in again to do some redrafts and things. And the final movie that we ended up with, I was ecstatic with. I absolutely loved it. So even though, I mean, there's a good 35 minutes of it that's nothing to do with the book at all, I don't know, I think all the important stuff was there. And in the end, I think you've got a 4-star movie, you know.
Have you had any involvement with the development of the sequel?
Yeah, we've been going back and forward with some ideas and everything, but there's a lot of people to please. I mean, there's Angelina Jolie, there's Timur, and there's Universal, you know. So everybody's actually everybody's a perfectionist on it, so nobody wants to come in, cash the check and take off. You know, everybody wants it to be good. And the first movie made 340 million, so the bar's pretty high. You know, it's not as if we started small and this could hopefully get a bit bigger. This has got to be mega now because the last one made a lot of money. So people are expecting a lot from it. So the screenplay's almost at the stage people are getting happy with it now. Some people had problems with it a few months ago, and some people didn't like it the month prior to that, the draft that was around. But I think, I can't remember exactly when it's going to start shooting. I don't even if I can officially say, but it'll be soon. And it's almost ready now. The script is almost ready.
And can you give us any kind of clues to what direction it might go in?
It follows on immediately after the end of the first movie, and it's just the fraternity's down, but in America, but there's an international fraternity out there, which we had in the book as well, that there was 5 fraternities across the world, and it's that James is out there being hunted by the other guys, you know.